Yeah, well, I want to say one final thing about evangelicals. This is just a really funny fact about American evangelicals. So in the early church, there was a doctrine called Arianism, which is unfortunately named because that has nothing to do with the Aryan race. It was, It was a guy called Arius. And Arius taught basically that Jesus was created by God, or Jesus was created by the Father. Now, if you know official Trinitarian doctrine, then the official Trinitarian doctrine is that Jesus, or the Father and the Son, are co-equal and co-eternal. So in other words, unlike with every other human father-son relationship, the Father and the Son have always existed together.
They're co-captain 1 and co-captain 2.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this idea called Arianism. Arianism basically said that Jesus was created by God. And the Catholic Church, or the church in general, did a really good job of stamping this out. They said, this is wrong. It's against church doctrine. You're not going to believe it, blah, blah, blah. They officially, destroyed it, made it so it no longer existed. And there was a recent study, 2016, something like that, or survey of American evangelicals, and 78% said they highly agreed with the phrase, Jesus is the greatest being created by God. So in other words, 78% of evangelicals affirmed a doctrine that has been condemned as a heresy for pretty much as long as Christianity has been around. And it comes to the fundamental point that Christians, they aren't Jews. So Jews, they actually teach their kids scripture. They you have the bar mitzvah where you have to learn a portion of the Torah. Pretty much every Jew who's raised in a religious Jewish family knows these things. But in America, they don't really teach Christian families don't really teach their children Christianity. They just teach them the cultural affiliation of evangelical. So, and that's how you get a situation where 78% of so-called evangelicals in America are affirming a doctrine that has been, like I say, condemned as heresy for as long as anything has ever been condemned as a heresy. And also, even if, obviously, if you don't necessarily buy into what the Catholic Church condemns as heresy, you just look at the Bible and it's very clear that Jesus has existed forever because he says, before Abraham was, I am, meaning he's existed eternally. But the point is that basically, I just find that to be a fantastic statistic to demonstrate that when you're talking about evangelical Christianity, you're not talking about a religious position. You're not talking about a bunch of people who actually believe anything based on scripture or church tradition or anything that relates back to anything about what Jesus is or how he taught or what, the last 2,000 years of Christianity have been about. You're basically dealing with a bunch of people who were mobilized by Ronald Reagan and, to a lesser extent, people like Richard Nixon in the 60s and 80s, and now Donald Trump. Well, it's like, it's like George Bush in the 2000s, Ronald Reagan in the 80s, and Nixon to an extent in the Nixon was in the 60s, wasn't he?
Nixon, 68 to 74. But also, what really brought them into the mainstream was Goldwater in 1964. I want to say when he ran his presidential campaign.
Yeah,
that's what Goldwater was one of the people who really did kind of move the Republican Party towards this crazy Christian wing.
Oh yeah. I think I've heard his name. To be honest, I didn't know that enough to remember it offhand, but yeah, now that you mention it, I do recognize the name. So, although I probably recognize the name from something else. So, okay, that's a useful tidbit of information. Yeah, but basically, like I say, these people, they're just, they're
just idiots, Michael.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't even have any principles. They don't even have any values apart from hating other people.
Yeah,
that's their only value, and also they don't like abortion.
Yeah, it's a funny situation where, as much as you can dislike because there's a difference between fundamentalists and evangelicals. It's a very small difference. It's not really worth going into. But the primary difference is that fundamentalists, whatever you say about them, actually do hold to the Bible and actually do believe in the Bible.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, fundamentalists tend to be much less racist, mostly because fundamentalists, actually believe the Bible and whatever
teachings of Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So even though they, obviously take all the things about homosexuality and women and, to an extent, even things that there are fundamentalists who believe that we should bring back stoning and things like that. But whatever you can say about them, they're still hey, Jesus said that all nations are equal and, don't esteem one genealogy over the other and things like that. And obviously they know that because they're crazy religious people. So they can preach about how Jesus said don't esteem one genealogy over the other and things like that. But evangelicals, they're I have no Mexicans in my country. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, we should move on to the final point because we got a bit sidetracked.